What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's Professor Anime and welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to be talking about Drifters episode 2. So this episode actually kind of gave us a little bit of an info dump compared to last week's episode. You would think that episode 1 would be more of an info dump as it's kind of like introducing you to the world and the characters. But if you actually think about it, Episode 2 gave us a lot to go on for in this episode. So in my episode 1 review, I did state that it might be possible that we might see more drifters in, later parts of the episodes of the series, as technically, there's more doors that lead to different parts and I guess the timeline. So that would mean that technically Drifters is a series that is not about, these three main protagonists of the series who we were introduced in last week's episode, but it's also going over other historical figures throughout history, which is pretty interesting, and each of the doorways lead to a different timeline within that world in which they are set place in. So it's quite interesting. I'm liking how Drifters is going over this sort of thing because I really like to see historical elements throughout my series. So I'm not gonna lie, when I saw that I was like, oh, okay, that's quite interesting. I actually kind of like that because I like historical figures in my literature, just learning more about them. Obviously this is an alternate history, so it's not gonna be 100% accurate, of course, but it's still kind of cool to see, historical figures actually play as characters within a series. As to how they are going to, be used in the plot, we're not really sure. But anyways, let's get down to the bare bones of what this episode was really about. Pretty much in this episode, this was the battle of the Elves town. We saw in the previous episode of Drifters that there was two little child elves that ended up helping our main protagonist, Toyo Hisa. I'm gonna call him Toyo though, so just for the sake of this review, I'm gonna call him Toyo. But Toyo was brought in by these two childlike elves. He was saved by them, and that is how he ended up meeting our other two drifters that reside in this world. And pretty much throughout really the rest of the episode, we see that the elves' village end up being pillaged. Pretty much it is burning to a crisp by the army of that world. And obviously because of the fact that elves serve as a lesser species in that world, and because of the fact we had it to where two of the elves residing in that village ended up saving a drifter, which is technically breaking the code of law of that world, all of the rest of the elves residing in that village are automatically put at guilt, honestly, and pretty much the only sort of punishment that is available to them is death. So we have it to where, we have part of the kingdom ends up, charging into the elves' village, and they end up burning the crap out of the village, honestly, and start slaughtering everyone. But that is until we end up get to see Toyo appear with the rest of his gang, the rest of the drifters. And of course we know that Toyo was being a savage, just pretty much chopping everyone up to pieces. And when he eventually ends up finding the commander, he starts beating the commander with the sheath of his sword. And this is where it gets brutal. This is where it gets brutal right here, because he is literally like pounding the living crap out of this guy, and then he's like, yeah, I'm done. I don't think I'm gonna kill you. He walks away, picks up his sword, and gives it to one of the elves who previously lost one of their sons due to the fact that, the commander ended up killing one of his sons. So he's like, you know what? I think you should kill this guy. And we have it to where you know, but before everyone ends up picking up, you know, the weapons that are on the ground, you know, it was quite funny to see because of the fact that, you know, when it comes to Toyo, he speaks Japanese, and he's in a fantasy world, and in this fantasy world, they speak an entirely different language. In case you haven't noticed, the dialogue isn't really Japanese. I mean, it's Japanese, but at the same time, when it comes to the series of Drifters, you're technically listening to a foreign language. I mean, it's really not a real language, okay? And, you know, they can't understand Toyo at all, but they know what he is saying, and this is where we see the elves in the village end up picking up all the weapons that are on the ground, going after the commander-in-chief and killing them there right and then on the spot. And by the conclusion that we got on this episode of Drifters, it seems like some sort of faction of demons is going to appear, which is very interesting. But I want to touch upon one thing before I head out with this review. So, the guy who ended up sending Toyo into this fantasy world, or pretty much, you know, sending whoever he ended up sending into these different worlds, because, you know, technically people who are sent into these different worlds by this one man named Murasaki are known as Drifters, as they simply are drifting throughout timeline into different portions of, you know, worlds. So, this guy is named Murasaki, okay? And it seems like he is doing this, you know, sending Drifters to other worlds for a specific cause. Maybe to fix points in the timeline of history in order to, you know, I don't know, maybe bring about peace or something like that, because the guy doesn't seem that evil of a dude, because as we see by the, you know, end of this episode, we see that there's apparently this other female known as Easy, I think that is how you pronounce her name, and from what we saw, it seemed like she can pretty much change any portion of time. Like, if she wants to, like, send forces out or something in order to oppose the Drifters, all she has to really do is just snap her fingers, as where we see by the end, you know, when she snaps her fingers on the newspaper, pretty much she can add in, you know, some event that happens throughout history with a snap of the finger. So it's quite interesting about her character. I want to kind of learn more about her, see exactly, you know, what she's all about. But apparently her group that she has for the opposing forces of the Drifters are called Ends. Now, are the Ends actually, you know, the faction of, you know, these demons that appear at the end of the episode of Drifters? I guess so. It seems like it's leading out to be something like that. But then we also have this spy group that has been in the previous episode of Drifters and also in this episode of Drifters. They're pretty much all in white. They have their own commander, it seems like. And basically all we really seen from them is that they are studying the Drifters. They're spying on them, trying to learn about them, their abilities, and such. So, where Drifters is going right now is, it's pretty interesting so far. I like the setup, how it's going, especially with the characters. I'm liking the characters. I think this is a very violent show, and you don't really get a whole lot of violent shows when it comes, I mean, you get violent shows, but what I'm saying is that, you know, due to the, you know, themes in Drifters, you know, I was expecting maybe, you know, this series to actually be censored, but it's not censored. It's not censored at all, and I'm actually really happy about that because I like my gruesome anime. But what I'm trying to get at here is that I just hope that all this setup as to, like, all of these characters from these different worlds, these different themes, and, you know, the whole timeline issue, like, I really hope that this story doesn't get convoluted. Like, I hope it doesn't become something, like, so complex to the point where everything is just all over the place, and, you know, not really much makes a whole lot sense. But yeah, so far, I'm actually enjoying Drifters so far. Let me know what you guys thought about this episode in the comments down below. How are you all enjoying Drifters so far? Do you think it's going to get complex later down the line? Because, I mean, we are, you know, getting a lot of additions in this series, especially regarding other fantasy worlds, historical elements, timeline, and just other stuff. So I'm very curious if this series will end up being a little bit too complex later down the line, and it could actually hurt the series. But I don't know, that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think about the series of Drifters so far, and what do you expect of this series later down the line. And of course, if you like this video, don't forget to drop a like. It always helps out the channel. And if you want to stick up to date to my future content from me, just hit that red subscribe button down below, and you'll never miss a video from me. That about does it for this video, guys. Love you all. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.